Hello, Honors U.S. History students. All right, so here our video notes are going to be on the end of the war. You're going to see also a reading on the blog that are going to go along with this. It might give you a little bit more detail, but figured to have a video to go over some of that stuff would be a nice little review for you guys. All right, so go ahead and get out that paper and pencil, pause your video while we're doing this. And again, if you got questions, make sure you send them to me. Right, so we start off the U.S. Entry into the war. So our soldiers, when they were coming into war, they were called the American Expeditionary Forces, right? And we're going to have the Selective Service Act, which is the draft. During this time period, it was actually a popular draft during the First World War and the Second World War because people wanted to serve their country. We have about 3 million people are going to be drafted, right? And they're going to get the nickname of the Doughboys. So I got my little Pillsbury Doughboy guy over here, all right? And they're going to be called that because their buttons on their uniforms look like little donuts, which is adorable, right? And so this whole idea of that they hope that if the U.S. entered the war, then maybe the Germans would be scared and forfeit or quit the war. That didn't happen. Right. Okay. During this ending part of the war, because remember the U.S. entered the war in 1917, right? They entered in pretty late, and so we were kind of part of the turning point of the war in Europe, our entry to help them out. And so Wilson, President Wilson at the time, comes up with a peace idea for after the war, and he called this the 14 points. Definitely make sure you have this stuff highlighted on your paper, right? The 14 points, his peace proposal is going to be a major part of the end of the war. One of the major sections of this was the League of Nations. Sounds really familiar, right? Should sound like the United Nations. It's basically what we had before the United Nations happened, and the United Nations is created after World War II. Right? And this organization, very basic, same idea as the United Nations, promoting security and peace around the world. So kind of the idea of stopping another world war from occurring. Right? Now, some other things that were in his 14 points, right? And we're not going to talk about all 14, right? We have the League of Nations and these other 3 that we're going to talk about. And some of these are things that people liked, other things people are not going to like. And so what we want to do is, from what we know about the war, what are things that everyone's going to be like, yeah, that's a good idea, and what are things that people would not think is a good idea? So our first thing here we got is self-determination, right? This idea that you as a community, you and your country get to determine who is going to be your leader. So this is obviously not going to be pro-imperialism, it's not going to be pro-empire, right? So a lot of people like this, unless you want to be an empire. So like the British, they want to have an empire, right? The United States, we just talked about imperialism. So those areas that those countries have taken over are totally for self-determination. However, the countries ruling them, like the Americans and the British, are not going to be for this. So this is going to be kind of, some people like it, some people don't. Another thing Wilson's going to have is no blame. So he didn't want any country to be blamed for causing World War I. Because obviously if you have somebody blaming another person, that's going to cause more trouble down the road. You know, kind of think of foreshadowing here for the Second World War. But if you have as big of a conflict as a world war, people are going to be blamed. So this one's not really going to be endorsed by a lot of countries involved in the treaty. He also had the idea of no reparations. Reparations is payment, right? So basically, if you are in trouble for the war, you got blamed, you're supposed to pay for damages you caused. Well, if your country is mostly destroyed, you're going to want somebody to pay for it. So this one, again, doesn't really happen in that treaty. So definitely C and D here, all right, are not going to be things people are going to want. Self-determination, this one's going to be in there, right, but not everybody's going to like it. Right. So when does the war actually end? All right, it ends, the Armistice is the stop of fighting on the 11th day of the 11th hour of the 11th month. So November 11th, which is Veterans Day. Right? Okay, and so that's why we celebrate Veterans Day, because it's the end of the First World War, right? The people that are going to be negotiating the end of the war are going to be called the Big Four, and those guys are over here. So we have the flags of Italy, France, the United States, and Great Britain, right? They're the ones that are going to be negotiating what is happening at the end of this war, right? So the U.S. wants to have peace without victory, ending the war, no punishment to anybody, But you remember the United States, their country was not tore up, right? Like France. France's country has trenches all over it, right? They're blaming the Germans for everything, right? Because their country is completely devastated, right? And so they want to have humiliation for the Germans. They want the Germans to pay for what had happened to the country of France and these other countries that were really devastated. So Wilson has to compromise on his 14 points because obviously the French want to blame someone and they want someone to pay for what had happened to their country. So what is the treaty that ends the war? It is the Treaty of Versailles, right? So you should remember some of this from world history, right? But the Treaty of Versailles is going to do a lot of different things. So our first thing we got is the creation of a bunch of new countries, right? We're going to look at a map real quick to see those a little bit better. So on our map here, all of the countries in yellow are new countries, right? So we have all these here in Eastern Europe, but we also have Ireland is created, right? Another thing to notice on this map is these outlines of different colors, the green, the orange, and the red, and the purple, right? Those are outlines of the original countries at the beginning of the war. So Germany originally was all this land here that is in green. So they lost a little bit of land here, which is part of Poland, right? Little foreshadowing there for the Second World War, right? The Austro-Hungarian Empire is here in orange, right? They are completely broken up into many, many countries, and that's to prevent them from creating another war, right? Over here, the Russian Empire went all the way here in purple, right? And it is going to have now all these new countries. These countries will be eventually taken over by the Soviet Union when we get to the Cold War after World War II. Right? And then down over here in red is the Ottoman Empire, right? It is going to be cut up into several countries, and you can see we have Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, right? And then this is area, since it is going to be cut up and these borders being drawn by Europeans that are not familiar with the people that actually live here, this is going to cause some of those more modern day conflicts that we see even nowadays, since there is a civil war happening in this kind of general area of the world. Right. The other parts of the Treaty of Versailles, these two videos here I'm going to post in the description below for you guys, so definitely look at those. They should help you out. But the major things other than creating new countries, they're going to blame Germany for the war. Right? Germany's going to have to pay $269 billion in reparations. That's going to cause what's called hyperinflation. Right? And so hyperinflation means that your dollar's not worth anything. Right? And so here this guy, this is a German, he is using his German marks, which are their dollars, and he's using them as wallpaper on his wall because they're literally not worth anything because they're just kind of printing more and more money to try and pay off these reparations, and it's devaluing their currency. The League of Nations will be added, right, to the treaty, and again, this defense alliance. However, a lot of Americans don't like this, specifically people in the Senate, right, because the Senate always has to sign or approve treaties for them to become ratified, right? However, they refuse to sign the treaty because they think it's going to get you into another war. So we, the United States, never signed the Treaty of Versailles ending the First World War, right? Okay, here we got two cartoons we're going to look at. All right, so here we got Uncle Sam. His hands are being tied by the League of Nations, right? And then this idea of these other countries could drag us into their conflicts. Right? And our last cartoon, this one's one of my favorites just because it's so many things are going on. But we have Uncle Sam here. He's getting married to this lady, and it says on her dress, Foreign Entanglements, right? And who is marrying them is this guy that has a book that says League of Nations, right? And he's at the part of this ceremony where if anybody shows just cause why they may not lawfully be joined together, let him speak now, right? And the U.S. Senate is busting through the window and being like, stop, don't marry her. And it's because the U.S. Senate does not want to have any part of this League of Nations, and so they do not sign the treaty, right? So that is the ending part of World War I. Right? Make sure you're also doing the reading that is on the blog that goes along with a lot of this stuff, because hearing it from me and looking at the pictures is one thing, but it helps us remember more of those details is also to do the reading. All right, so I'll see you again soon. And again, if you have questions, make sure you're sending those to me.